because I always try and keep it open to make sure it actually goes live here. So we should technically be live.
We are live right now. You are literally right on the dot at 6.
Perfect. All right. So for anybody who's watching this, which is nobody right now, but maybe in the future someone will listen to this part. I don't know.
Ingrates.
all like 40 people that tend to watch these. Oh crap! Now it's bleeding through on my. Okay, there we go. So I was just going to talk to you, and I got Wyatt here. I was going to ask you about, I guess, your reactions to like the American elections and all of that, and your thoughts on like the second Trump administration and these kind of things. Because I talked to you about this a long time ago, before it was during the Republican primaries, I think, and I
We
assume
were talking about the debates, weren't we?
I don't think so, unless we
I
did
think
it on Twitter, or did you come on again at some point?
I don't. Maybe I wasn't available for the debates, but I think we were like reacting to who we liked as candidates.
Yeah, well, we
Uh,
we were watching, I think, the Iowa primary with Ron DeSantis, and it was the first and really the only Republican kind of primary election this time. And
yeah, New Hampshire kind of was a thing, and then South
yeah,
Carolina,
well,
but those were like
technically she stayed in. Nikki stayed in till Super Tuesday, but it was over. Like Iowa was kind of the big thing, and it was like, can somebody do something to get to like 40%? And no, they. Well, I guess Nikki did get to 40% in New Hampshire, but it wasn't enough.
that's what I was saying. It's like the
She had to win
second
it. She had to
one
win
where
it. Yeah.
it was more so seeing, and this is kind of always the thing when like when Biden was running for his renomination, that didn't really go that, end up really mattering.
No.
I guess it kind of did because it ensured Kamala could get the
Yeah, they
nomination.
killed themselves with that. I think with all the retrospective Monday morning quarterbacking stuff, that was my big thing. I was like, they should have had a primary. I was like, that probably killed him more than anything else.
Oh, but like Kamala needed them to not have a primary because we're saying this because that lady would not win. It's not that she needed to introduce herself a little bit more. She was properly introduced.
Yeah, people hated her, and she was tainted by the failure of the Biden administration. And I said that immediately because as I was watching, I don't know what your thoughts were on Joe Biden dropping out. I was always kind of iffy on it until the debate, and then I recorded myself. It's on this channel watching the debate live, and you can hear me in there, and I'm just like, oh, he's fucking done. I was like, he's getting kicked out. I was like, they're gonna remove him. I was like, there is no recovering. I was like stunned. I'd never seen anything like that. And
honestly,
then,
though, he like at least the next day with his whole like when you get knocked down, you get back up thing. That in that moment, I think that proves that he's such a better candidate than Kamala Harris. Even after the most embarrassing day for a presidential candidate, he was able to actually, inject some energy, create clips that are shareable. The problem with Kamala, and I agree a lot if anyone ever watches Actual Justice Warrior, his take on the debate and like the Trump Kamala debate, I think was right on. That she lost that debate hard in the sense that nobody talked about her after that debate. For like 5 seconds they did, but there were no clips about it. I can't remember a single real thing she said about it other than the really long-winded jab about his rallies. But everyone was talking about Trump the entire time.
Yeah, it was all about eating the dogs.
And even outside of that, even just the imagistics of that debate, it's one of those watch it with the sound off kind of things. It looks like Trump's at a press conference going back and forth between all three people there, between the two moderators and Kamala. He literally looks like he might as well be doing a press conference. He already looks like he's the president. She looks like she's some random person who just happens to be on stage. Like he looks like it almost looks like if you told me that was a photo of him and Kamala there, him debating a stand-in for Hillary in 2016, I believe you.
Yeah, and I think that was my issue with once he got out, once he was done, I was like, okay, maybe they've got a chance and they'll do like their little mini primary or something. As soon as they installed Kamala, I was like, oh God. Like, cause I personally don't like her and never did. And I wasn't even sure if I would support her because I was never going to support Biden, and I wasn't probably going to do that with her. I kind of made a meme out of it and just spammed a bunch of obnoxious shit about her online, which turned out to be kind of what the actual Democratic strategy was to just like spam obnoxious stuff about her.
Maybe you influenced them too much.
I don't know, because like that was my thing. I was like, I'm just gonna pretend to be like, she's the most amazing person ever, even though I hated her, but like I didn't
Did
really
you
have a
just
strong
fall out of a
opinion.
coconut tree?
Yeah, I didn't have a strong opinion, I guess, but I kind of got tilted over, I suppose, by the January 6th stuff, and then JD Vance I really don't like, but I'm not like
I still
upset.
don't like JD Vance very much. I know he's like people probably in their minds think, oh, it was worth it because he really helped out in the Tim Walz debate in the sense that he beat Tim Walz pretty bad.
It's a
I,
VP
I don't
debate,
see
though.
Doug Berg, but I don't see Doug Burgum not beating him. I don't see Marco Rubio not beating him.
Oh,
I don't see
Rubio,
Young Kim
yeah.
not beating. I think any guy would have beat Tim Walz because Tim Walz just doesn't come across well in debates. He's too not all over the place. That's too generic. But I mean, he's just kind of. I don't think he's just kind of unprofessional.
That was
He's very
another
much
thing.
like debating Chris Farley.
Another thing I harped on about their stupid mistakes was, and everyone said this, everyone did, like left, right, center was like, why would she pick him and not Josh Shapiro? And like the only thing anyone could think is like, it's because Josh Shapiro is a Jew, like, which is
Yeah.
the most insane thing to have to say. But that might be it. I heard other people saying, well, he might outstage her, which, okay, maybe there is that, but
She needed somebody to
yeah,
upstage her.
yeah. I mean, I think Josh Shapiro should have been at the top of the ticket, and then maybe you put, I don't know, maybe you give Kamala the VP again, just as like a thank you for being here or something, participation trophy.
There's some like continuity feeling or
Yeah,
whatever.
the big thing I think with her that I'd heard is it just made it easier to move the money into the campaign war chest over into her campaign.
But do you remember how little that they actually had on hand at the time? It was only 30 million. I would have just burned it. And the thing is,
Yeah,
they could have still
yeah.
spent it. They would have just said, "Hey, me and Kamala are endorsing Josh Shapiro and I don't know, like whatever, or
And the
like
money did them no good
Jared
anyway.
Pritzker." Like,
The money, they didn't use the money. I don't know if you've heard about all of this, the kind of scandals and stuff where they blew through over $1 billion, and some of it was the most insane. They spent $1 million on a TV set for like a whatever, like an hour interview, or I don't know what it was, with
a
Oprah.
100,000 for the caller daddy set that they had to recreate in a hotel
Yeah,
room.
there was
It was a
100,000.
million for Oprah.
Yeah, yeah, insane. That's
The five
insane.
hundred thousand dollars for Al Sharpton.
That can't be real. Like that has to be like some kind of somebody's pocketing.
That would be like if
Stuff like
I wrote a book on what would happen if Joe Biden dropped out, and I'm basically just showing that Kamala's incompetent, so she has to like pay people to like her. You'd be like, that's like hyperbolic. She wouldn't have to do that. The media will swing behind her because she's the Democratic candidate. All the pro-Democrat outlets will just do a lot of media for her. Like, no, that she had to pay. She had to pay. And the thing is, Al Sharpton's already a TV interviewer. It's not like she was paying him to come out of retirement like Oprah, where you could maybe like justify it. And even then, like my goodness, Oprah, she's like, "Whoa, staff need to be paid. How much are you worth? Just pay them." Look,
good God.
how much are those people being paid if it cost $1 million?
Yeah, and if they're doing this for a campaign that they're supporting, you think they would do it, cut you a discount, maybe?
Oh, and did you hear how little Trump actually had to spend on staffing?
No,
It's not right when people say Trump only raised 338 million or whatever, because when you actually take into account the primary too, it's like over $1 billion as well. But obviously, he spends a lot preemptively rebuilding since he was taking in money and spending it since 2022. But they're talking about the campaign period. In the official campaign period, she's raised like 1.3 billion or something like that, and spent all of it, and even spent herself into debt. But she spent in like her 1.2 billion or whatever the exact numbers. I heard she spent over 500 million on staffing. Trump spent 14 million on staffing.
that's
Which,
crazy.
like, that's an endorsement of that Wiles lady that he's going to be making his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, because like that's some discipline of knowing we don't need we just don't need
Well, I
staffers
assume
sitting
what it
around doing
is.
focus groups screwing around. Just spend on ads, just spend on signs, just spend on on radio, TV, YouTube, all that stuff.
I assume a part of it is that Trump was probably getting more people willing to work for free. More volunteers. You're not going to have to like actually have paid staff if you have someone that's willing to do it. And if you have higher levels of enthusiasm, you're going to get more bodies willing to do that. But I don't know. Did the election turn out more or less the way you would have suspected, or did you expect like a much bigger landslide win? Or
Honestly, this is about right. I never thought everyone in the back of their minds thinks either candidate can always win. There's two people in the race, effectively. Obviously, one
yeah,
or the other
well,
is going to win. Even like Nixon's people probably thought there was a chance McGovern was going to win at 72. But like I was thinking in my head, it's like a 90-10 chance Trump's going to win here. And I don't. And then when I was looking at the swing states, it's like, okay, all the Rust Belt states tend to vote together. It's very similar demographics across Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. So if they're going to go to one candidate or the other, I don't see them going Kamala Harris. And they all went Trump.
Yeah.
Sunbelt, with illegal immigration being such a big deal, they're not going Kamala Harris. Georgia, Brian Kemp swung behind Trump. Trump is digging into the black community a little bit. She's just underperforming as well in terms of turnout because Trump could technically get 0 black voters. But if black turnout's also extremely down, it doesn't matter. Atlanta just doesn't show up basically.
Yeah.
And Atlanta both didn't show up very much, and Trump increased his percentage share. So I was just based on all these factors I was seeing in the different states and like the culinary union members, not the actual union itself, but the union members voting in Nevada saying that they want Trump. Is like I've been told never vote against or never bet against the culinary union in Nevada, and that has remained true.
I think what got to me was there was people that were like shocked by this, and I don't see how anyone who paid close attention should not have been surprised. Like this was even if you thought Kamala was going to win, this was like a completely predictable outcome based on the polling, which I don't know why people always seem to turn against the pollsters like after all of this, when if you look at the most recent polls right before the election, this was an outcome that was perfectly within, like, and all the pollsters were saying that. They're like, yeah, based on this, it wouldn't be shocking to see either one of them win all 7 swing states. And a lot of them were saying, and this was kind of my thinking, was one of them's going to do it. I'm not sure which, that it's more likely than not that one of them will win all 7. It just depends on which way the polls end up getting tilted, because they were basically all within, I mean, they have different margins of error, but they were all within like 3 points of flipping every single state. And that's when you look at the final results, Trump won by anywhere from 1 to 3, about higher than what he was showing up kind of on average in those final polls. So like, in my view, the polls weren't wrong. You were just interpreting them incorrectly.
Yeah.
If you
Some
didn't
polls
see
were
this.
definitely wrong.
Well, the Iowa poll, but I mean,
the ones
that's an outlier.
Well, I was going to say with the polls that were good, like the pollsters who have good reputations did well. So if you followed Atlas Intel, you were fine. Rasmussen was pretty good. Trafalgar was pretty good. I heard like the only ones you had to avoid were like CNN and Marist. There was a few that were bad, and obviously Ann Seltzer in Iowa. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was crazy. But everyone knew that was crazy. And I wasn't even talking. I was talking about like more the aggregate of just the polling averages that they were coming out with, where they were taking collections of all of them. And then you look at it, and he didn't come up 5 points over what he was supposed to have in any of the states. It was, I think, the biggest one, he might have been 3 points higher, maybe in Arizona. In a lot of the Rust Belt states, I think it was within 1 or 2 points kind of what they were showing. It just flipped from being maybe a tie or 1 point Harris down to a 1 point Trump. And I was like, guys, that's not like, if that's the results you get, that's a good poll. If the poll was saying it's 1 point for Harris and it turns out 1 point Trump, that's not like a,
you just have to. There was just some of the pollsters who consistently would say like +2, +3 Harris in some of the states where Trump ended up winning by 5. That's a miss. But again, generally the polls are pretty good. But man, it's hilarious. I like. There's some professors I had for like multiple classes, for both my undergraduate and my graduate degree, who, man, they ate up that Ann Seltzer poll. They thought it was real. Like
Really?
They thought she was going to win every swing state in Iowa. I took my master's degree with one of these guys, and it's public policy. It's not like it's like art. I mean, and it's okay he has obtuse opinions. Like, people who are supposed to know better thought she was going to win Iowa.
Well, but the thing is, if you even listened to, I don't know, I was like, I would go around and look at what professional pollsters who were, maybe they support, or like you could tell they kind of lean Democrat, but they're professional and they're looking at it and they're saying, that's an outlier. That's crazy. And like, I didn't I went into it saying like I don't think anything crazy like that's going to happen. I don't know who's going to win. They could flip either of the 7 swing states. I was kind of leaning Kamala just for a variety of reasons. I thought maybe the abortion thing would come in bigger, but I really didn't know. And but that kind of thing pisses me off when someone is like, they'll take these individual things and then they'll cling on to it with like certainty that like, okay, I found this one thing. It's like the guy, the history guy. You know who I'm talking about? Is it Lickman or whatever with his 13 keys?
Alan Lickman.
That was always so dumb to me.
Keys.
I thought that was so stupid.
If he followed his 14 keys, he would have been right.
What?
If he actually followed his own rules, he would have been right. Do you know that his keys, and it's not that bad of a theory. It's kind of overrated in the sense it's really just, dude, stick your finger in the air and guess.
Well, I hate the notion.
Like, oh, I've gotten 90. I've gotten all the elections.
Most elections are easy to predict, though. Is the
I know.
thing.
I was going to say that. Yeah.
This one was a little hard, but most elections are not hard. Like if you look at like a lot of them, you'll have a winner that's like way up in the air. I guess the best one he did was when he predicted Trump over Hillary, because according to the polling, that should not have happened. But so there.
Do you know what? Do you know how obtuse he was being? Like you could just tell he just deeply hates Trump, so he like refuses to make good predictions for him. The thing is that you like basically rate on who's the incumbent, and so if things are bad and you're the incumbent, naturally you're going to suffer. He literally said that Trump was the incumbent this election compared to Kamala. And it's like, that's
really?
Actually ridiculous. He said that on foreign policy, Biden and Harris had mostly succeeded, which is...
That's insane.
Yeah, I know. And so if he just followed his own keys, even just those two, he was wrong on a few other factors as well in terms of like how he's scaling it, he would have been right because Kamala's effectively the incumbent. The foreign policy has been screwed up super bad by the incumbent. If he just followed it, he would have been fine.
See, I never paid that much attention to how he was actually filling them in. I remember him talking about the keys, and I was like, oh, he's probably giving. I never really paid that much attention to it because I was like,
gimmick, though.
I don't like that kind of thing where it's like, well, look at this one county, and or anytime you're doing that kind of historical thing. Because my thing with that guy, I was like, dude, every election's unique, especially this one. Like, there's so many factors in here that you could not account for based on looking at the past 10 elections. Like, you have a guy running for a non-consecutive term who's already been in office. You had a candidate just get replaced after, right before the convention, after the primaries, just got inserted. Trump almost got assassinated. Like, there's so much stuff that you just cannot factor. Like, he was brought up on criminal charges and all of this stuff. None of those things have happened in the past, like, 10 elections.
Right from before. A lot of elections are pretty easy to predict. By the way, Alan Lickman also was wrong about 2000, but he then literally will justify.
He thinks Gore won.
Yeah, he thinks that it was stolen from Gore.
Yeah.
He thought like because of like the vote counting in Florida, Bush should have probably won by more than 10,000 plus votes. But it was one of those situations where when the Panhandle was still voting, there was bunch of the outlets basically just said, "Oh yeah, Gore's winning" because of like some really early returns in like Miami-Dade or whatever. And it's like you can't do that when a state has 2 time zones. You cannot announce anything.
Yeah, that's crazy. So I guess we'll move on to that kind of covers like I guess what we would have thought would happen.
Can I quickly make one more point?
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
On specifically the state predictions people made. I don't know what her name is. It doesn't matter. There is a lady on the Hill Rising who actually thought that Kamala was going to win Texas and Florida.
I saw people. Well, there's always crazies that like there was people saying Trump was going to win 40 states. I was like, dude, I remember trying to explain this to people. I was like, it's not going to be something crazy. Like you're not going to flip Texas blue or Florida. Trump's not winning by 40 states. Like this is not, people get carried away. I don't know what inspires people to do that, where it's like, I like the guy, therefore I'm going to make, you see people do this if they watch like sports too. Where
it's like when people were thinking
their team is so much better than they are.
It's like when people are thinking that no, Trump won the 2020 race and it was like just Dominion machines that just set a different outcome.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the more nuanced, well, there's mail-in ballots everywhere, so it's not really much of an election because it's basically who has the better ballot harvesting game. No, no, no. The real crazies were saying like, no, 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 he won California, but they just changed the votes.
Oh yeah,
Have you
that's like
walked
Tim
around
Pool.
California?
I think Tim Pool said stuff like that, where he was like, it would be like a 50 state or a 49 state landslide. I was like, guys, we're not.
You can never even say what Tim Pool said in the sense that I will still listen to some of his coverage of politics once in a while, but the man will say something and then contradict it literally in the next sentence. It's so obnoxious. He's just like, well, I'm not saying that the FBI is involved, but if this happened, it's totally the FBI. And it's like what he'll like guard himself, but barely from what he's saying. And I'm like, the thing is, just say it, dude. I'm actually not that offended. But he will say like, well, well, he'll literally say that like the something about the Democrats being like vicious, and then he'll just start slamming his table and screaming, "They're our enemy."
Yeah,
Or
well,
like
stuff
that
like
was
that.
basically what he was doing on Ukraine, that they're a national security threat. Ukraine is our enemy, and he's like emotional, but you can tell he's not actually emotional. He's just doing this for the video. He's
Yeah,
the fakest person
stuff
in
like that
media.
bothers me. It bothers me less, that kind of a thing, than like what you were talking about with this professor with Iowa, because that's someone that should know better. When they see like an Ann Seltzer poll at Iowa showing that it's like they should know, like they know what an outlier poll is. They know that this happens. They should know that, and so it bothers me more when you have someone like that clinging to something that's less ridiculous, like flipping one unpredictable, one state that no one saw. It's less ridiculous technically, but it's like
Yeah,
you
like
should
when
know
you're in
better.
the crazy frame of mind, you can believe almost anything crazy. Where it's like should be in the reasonable frame of mind, and he's willing to believe crazy stuff and then like justify it.
Probably what pisses me off even more is when you have something like that. Like, let's say that somehow she did flip Iowa and it did come out, and then the professor would be like, "See, I told you so." It's like, well, you were still wrong, even if she did, and that always upsets me. It was like
Honestly, that
you're like, that's even worse. It's like, well, you technically ended up being right, but you were still wrong for thinking that way before.
Yeah, honestly, that happens a lot.
Yeah.
It's kind of like two of these different situations where I say I hate when people are right for the wrong reasons,
Yes.
as
Yes.
well as I hate when people say they're right when they had no reason to believe you were right. You
Yeah.
might as
You
well
got
just say
lucky.
I took it as an act, like as a belief in faith.
Yeah.
That's all you can really say. And so, oh my goodness, yeah. I always like when people use bad data or they assume that there's a whole situation in British Columbia I just experienced where like people were like, "Wow, the team in Surrey really overperformed," and it's like this very South Asian, like Indian part of British Columbia. They're like, "Wow, they did so well. They really overperformed the polls." I'm like, "Yeah, because South Asian people don't take polls. The people on the ground knew the entire time that they had traction, but like so many people are like convincing themselves it was this big upset. Like it wasn't. Go on the ground. It wasn't. It's so crazy how little these people take polls. So, like in British Columbia, where there's like 5 million people, they'll poll like 1,100, which is a good amount for an election. And out of 1,100, 18 South Asians will have taken the poll, even if like 15% of the province is South Asian.
Yeah. Well, you should be able to account for that by weighting it and stuff. I
Well,
mean,
the problem with waiting for 18% is very
it's still not
difficult.
enough. Yeah.
The
If you've only
problem
got.
with the problem with it too is the people who are most likely in that community to take a poll are second generation, more progressive people in Vancouver, not first, second generation immigrants in Surrey who are very socially conservative. Because we did well and beat British Columbia over an issue about SOGI 123, which was technically anti-bullying, quote unquote, tools for the classroom, which really just let teachers talk about gender theory.
Jesus. Um, well, anyway, I don't know if you want to move on and like we can talk about now that the election's over, and
The
talk
picks
about
overall.
the picks, what the Trump administration is, how is it going to be different? I don't know how much you've been paying attention to this. I have. I've been glued to it. This is like, I don't know how you guys get by. Our politics are, I feel like, so much more entertaining than the rest of the world at this point. It's like, it's almost like
Hey,
watching
in
reality
Canadian
TV.
politics, every once in a while, you have a minister who's a murderer.
Okay, well,
Go
yeah,
look up Colin Thatcher later. He tried to shoot somebody, and then he actually had his wife assassinated.
Jesus Christ.
And he's out of prison. He was invited to an event recently. I don't know why.
I'll have to check that out.
You'll have like politicians just like, oh man, they had to drop out of their nomination because they hit someone with their car and killed them. Like, oh my goodness.
Well,
It's like no coverage because like Canadian politics coverage is so sleepy.
I think we're beyond. At this point, I could see us, having a guy do that and then not drop out and keep running because we've got. We want to move on to the picks. I was going to say we got Matt Gaetz, who, I don't know. I guess he's not convicted of anything, but.
Yeah, and like I'd like to not think the worst of him because I already have enough reasons to just think he's a bit of a twerp. The thing with Matt Gaetz too is this. The funny thing is, I'm wondering. Let's just assume every crazy allegation against him is just wrong, just for argument's sake.
Yeah,
I actually think he probably could. There's a possibility he could potentially be a good AG because as an AG, you can't grandstand. You either put up or shut up. You have to have cases. You have to have a point. Matt Gaetz' biggest problem is in Congress. He's like what I call very much like Kerry Lake, a strike oppose populist. He's there to make a point and fly in the face of Kevin McCarthy. And then whenever he's actually said, hey, okay, put up or shut up, find a new pick for speaker that will satisfy you. Donald John Trump.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, Matt, shut up. My goodness.
I actually don't think I don't think that fight, I think that was completely personal. I think all he wanted was to take McCarthy out. I don't think it had anything to do with like actual politics or policy. I think it was a grudge because the way he saw it was McCarthy's been coming after me and getting onto my ass and all of this. And so once he had the opportunity and the chance, he was just going to destroy McCarthy just to stab him however he could. He didn't really care about appointing another speaker. That's what I think. I think because McCarthy even said this is personal, and I believe him because it's like it doesn't really make any sense otherwise. That's kind of the way I view it. Is he saw McCarthy as coming after him, so he's like, no, I'm just going to get him to get revenge, basically, and he took the opportunity.
Yeah, I could see that. And the thing is, that was why it was so frustrating. Watching that entire thing play out because there's so many people online, and it's always the most frustrating thing about politics is the reactions of people online who don't know what's going on, and they're like, man, he's taking it to that Rhino McCarthy. I can't stand people who cared about, is it going to be Corden and John Thune or Rick Scott? It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. And people are like, McConnell was a big old rhino. What do you mean by that? Well, these people don't even know what they're talking about. I drive me up a wall and people are like, oh, you know that Mitch, you like Lindsey Graham? He's a rhino. He was the first senator to re-endorse Trump in 2020. He was the only guy to do that for a while. He's actually very principled and loyal in a lot of ways.
I think what gets me about the rhino thing is the people they're calling rhinos are almost always more conservative than the typical like MAGA movement politician people are in like every way. Like Mitch McConnell's more conservative than Donald Trump. Like
let's be clear too.
Like I mean, he is like Mitch McConnell is the one who got all those justice picks put through to get the abortion thing taken off. Trump just put RFK in, or at least tries. I guess announced he'd be appointing him, and RFK is completely pro-choice, like all the way up to birth. And so it's like I don't know what the label rhino means other than anti-Trump or anti-MAGA at this point.
Here's the thing too, and this is where I take a lot, and I agree a lot with someone we both know, Stephen Michael Davis. And I'm not saying this as a negative in terms of I agree with Stephen and he makes a good point, and now I'm applying it to MAGA people, and I agree a lot with MAGA Republican type people myself, but they are now the establishment of the party. That's not a bad thing. That's not a good thing. That's just a reality that probably the plurality of Congress people are MAGA people, and that doesn't mean the rest of them are somehow rhinos. No, there are different factions of the party. New York Republican Congress people are very different from those who are from Alabama or Arizona or California, and everyone was acting like, whoever we pick as speaker is going to shape how legislation is done. It's like that's not how it works. This is not Canada, where the party leader and the ministers draft what actually goes onto the floor unless it's a private member's bill, which is selected by lottery who gets to put one up in what order. So no, they're not like what would the big difference be between John Thune and Rick Scott? And you're right though too. A lot of the people that they call rhinos tend to be the most conservative people. Do anyone remember when they had a witch hunt for Lindsey Graham? Because, oh my goodness, Lindsey, I can't believe you put up that abortion bill before the 22 election.
Yeah.
He did that. By the way, that my friend Chris from the Great Canadian Bagel, he makes a good point that actually probably helped the Republicans in that cycle. Because guess what? Now the Democrats can't say that you're going to go for a complete ban because you said 16 weeks. And now they have to argue against 16 weeks, and that's far less comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. And the speaker fight thing, that was particularly annoying to me because it doesn't matter that much. That's something I've talked about before. And I was pushing John Thune on Twitter, mostly just to annoy the Rick Scott people, because it was ridiculous. It was on top of it not being that important as far as it making much of a difference, because the individual senators can vote however they want. Like, the leader cannot force them to, confirm an appointment.
Oh.
The leader is like, he's making the schedule, he's whipping votes, he's doing that kind of a thing. But it doesn't matter too much. And what's more ridiculous about it is typically the way this is going to go is you're going to be in the leadership already. It's your turn. And so Cornyn had been the number 2. Currently, Thune was the number 2. So, one of them, it's like their shot, their turn to do it. They have relationships that they've built over decades with all of these senators and gained political capital in order to do this effectively. And their guy hadn't even finished his first term in the Senate. And they're like, he should be the leader because he's MAGA and we're in charge now. And it was like, that's not how that works, man.
Yeah,
like,
granted, Senate terms are 6 years. But the thing, like, I had somebody from my audience who's in Canada, which is like ridiculous that someone in Canada said they were upset with me because I said that I don't care that it's a private vote on who becomes the leader, because that was something people like Charlie Kirk were pushing. This is a travesty of democracy. I'm like, guys, this is where, again, I agree with Stephen Michael Davis. Democracy is often an extremely overrated value. Yep. It doesn't mean democracy isn't good in a lot of ways. Yes, but we don't need everything that the senators do to be like open to public opinion. I don't care who does catering in the Senate. I don't care who somebody's secretary is. Do you think that it's really effective to have the public breathing down people's necks over who they simply want to be the head negotiator of the Senate for them? Again, it's not Canada for anyone Canadian listening to this.
And what's crazy
individual senators can put up bills whenever they want. Nobody can stop them. It's not like you have to wait your turn. You can just put up forward whatever you want.
And it's not a constitutional position. This is like a thing within the party. Like, it's not an official position, the Senate Majority Leader. Like, that's a party thing. This is a thing between the senators of that party. Like, it's not like Speaker of the House. Like, it's a different thing.
There's this kind of like stupid, borderline kind of conspiratorial attitude that you get among some people whenever something isn't 100% transparent. Everyone's got to like basically like it's like they want all the senators to just meet in a pool to make sure that nobody's wearing a wire or something like that. And like they're all like people, because they don't get to know everything that like Ted Cruz does in a day. They're like, I wonder what's going on when that office door closes. Like, what is he doing? What do you think John Thune's everything John Thune does is going to have to be public? And someone's like, oh, I thought Ted Cruz was a conservative, but I heard he's going to vote for John Thune. Okay. Well, yeah, okay. I guess Ted Cruz isn't a conservative anymore because he knows John Thune. He likes his leadership qualities and he voted for him. Oh, but does he have conservative leadership qualities? He's a Republican from North Dakota. My goodness.
I'm pretty sure Ted Cruz actually ended up voting for Rick Scott anyway. At least he announced he would. But, I mean, you don't know. It's a secret ballot.
Rubio did, and I thought that Rubio was a big old stupid neocon or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means anymore. Like,
neocon?
I honestly hate the definition that people bring, like, oh, it's people who move from the Marxist left to the conservative right. I'm like, that's not how any other ideology is actually laid out, that it's defined by people's shift. By that definition, and I think she actually legitimately is, Thomas Sowell is a neoconservative, but you can't exactly fearmonger against him.
I don't even think it means. I think they use it like Rhino, and it's evolved over time. It used to be people that were in favor of the Iraq War, or now it's kind of like either establishment people or people who have ever said a critical word about Trump or have said positive things about Ukraine. I think that's kind of the big one. Is anyone that's been like tepidly supportive of Ukraine is a neocon somehow. They're pro-war,
But they'll
warmongers.
never also. But obviously, if you speak out against Ukraine, that also doesn't mean you're pro-Russia, even though it's totally fine to come to like 7 different conclusions about someone just based on them supporting Ukraine.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's wild. And then you get, I guess that segues perfectly into Tulsi Gabbard being an. I thought this was it to me. I think she's the most offensive pick in my view. Even though I understand why you might have people upset about RFK. That's kind of a wacky one, or Matt Gaetz. I could see why Republicans might be. I feel like though, like the thing with Tulsi, she was a Democrat until like 5 seconds ago. She was pretty far left on some of these things, and then like the stuff she has said about the United States, especially in our foreign policy, is like we're provoking all the rest of the world to like attack us or to do all of these moves. Like Russia only invaded Ukraine because they wanted to get rid of this like either American or Ukrainian, maybe joint controlled, I don't know, like bioweapons factory or something. And Russia's just trying to do the right thing. I don't know. And then like all the shit with Assad. Assad's not our enemy. He's a nice guy.
Well, and just the fact that she went to Syria with Assad's opposition, which sounds moderate, until you realize it's the Syrian Social National Party, and if that sounds like the Syrian National Socialist Party to you, it should.
Jesus.
Their logo is literally a scythe in a swastika
Syrian
formation.
Nazis.
Yeah. So, and that was the opposition that she thought was cool. And it's like, the thing is that I don't honestly think, I don't think she's that dangerous in the sense that what's she really going to do? In the sense that I think that she's more of a loyalist to Trump at this point than she is like a Bernie isolationist or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that she
at
would
the
actually...
same time, do you want someone at the head of intelligence who got, and it's not that, oh, is she pro-Russia? I don't think she's actually pro-Russia or something like that. It's more so, was she played by, if you were played by Assad, that's not good if you're in the head of intelligence.
Yeah, and I don't think she trusts U.S. intelligence. That was kind of my thing, is whenever she's like questioning whether or not, like, remember the thing with the chemical attacks in Syria, and U.S. intelligence was saying like, yeah, this is what we got, this is what they're saying, and she doesn't believe the reports. It's like, well, like, why should we have someone like that handling? Like, it's not that I think the most hyperbolic thing I said is she would just like sell all of our secrets and run off to Moscow. I don't think it's going to be like that. But I could see her making little decisions that are consequential that are a problem, where it's like, oh, well, I don't want to publish this report or pass it on or up or down because I don't really trust it, because in her mind she's thinking like, well, this doesn't make sense. Why would they do? Maybe that's not really right, and it doesn't. And she's going to be avoiding war, and so she's not going to want to send things up or down, or I guess she's just aggregating it. I'm not really 100%.
I think here's the bigger problem, and you're right. It's leaking reports. It's giving people intel that they shouldn't have, and it's kind of a reverse problem of the Obama administration, the Biden administration. Every time Israel's doing anything, if the Biden administration finds out, there's a good chance someone's going to leak it to Iran, like literally what happened recently. Is Tulsi Gabbard going to want to be on this? People being like, oh my goodness, this could be bad, this could escalate things. I'll give this to Russia so that they know about it beforehand. It's like, no, oh my goodness.
I don't think she would do that even. I just think she might not send things, or she might obfuscate and like obstruct. If she can see something that's possibly leading to a conflict, because she's so anti like us getting involved in any sort of a conflict. Like if she has something and she has a way to obstruct it or obscure it to make it not seem as bad or slow it down to where it's something that she thinks, oh, this could cause us to go to war with Iran, which in my view, like we've already got plenty of causes to go to war. Like they tried to kill the president. Okay. They put a hit out on Donald Trump. So like, I feel like we've got just cause to go to war with Iran already. And I don't think he's going to do that. But and that's part of my issue is the other people that are in the administration. You've got like Mike Walls and Marco Rubio and these people. and I don't see how they're going to get along with someone like her. Like,
Well, that's the one thing that gives me confidence that she can't do too much wrong, in the sense that doing something wrong would probably get Rubio or Waltz dumping something on her pretty fast.
yeah. And you got Hegseth, which that's a Hegseth. I don't even put in the same category as, like I said, like the craziest picks. Trump kind of tranched these out from the most, like, in my opinion, good and normal picks. I know the MAGA people hated them, but to me, I was like, these are good. Like, I like Rubio, I like Mike Walls, and this is going well. And all the
And
MAGA
did you
people
ever
are
see
like,
the
it's the
interview that
swamp.
Rogan? Did you ever see the? Did you see the Rogan part of the Rogan interview with Trump?
I saw. I think I saw the whole thing.
Okay, the funniest part to me, or like honestly the most telling, was when Trump, probably having heard just so many nasty things about him over the years that he just basically repeats it verbatim without really thinking. When he's saying, "Oh yeah, John Bolton's an idiot," blah blah, and then partway into that little segment of the Joe Rogan interview, and like Joe Rogan's like, "Oh yeah, he's a crazy warmonger," and then Trump for a second has like this kind of like moment where he's like, but whenever he was standing behind me in negotiations with like
Oh yeah,
China
yeah.
or Russia or Iran, they got really scared. I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's a good national
Yeah, that's
security
pretty
advisor.
based.
Yeah, that's what you want. And actually, I know guys who are like literally multipolar world people, who are like anti-interventionists, and even they agree actually now that they're like, okay, I can see the idea that you need a good cop, bad cop kind of administration where it's like, hey, well, do you want to deal with me, Donald Trump, who even himself can be a little bit all over the place, or do you want to have to deal with John Bolton? I mean, and that's what freaks out your enemies to the point where they don't want to mess with you.
Yeah, I do remember him saying that. I don't know if that's a little bit.
I'm not trying to embellish. His
no,
comment went as far as to basically say, people seem scared of him, and that's
no,
kind
no,
of
no.
all he said.
I do remember him saying that verbatim. I'm just saying I think that was a sort of a post hoc kind of thing that he came up with. I think the real reason he got John Bolton wasn't because he thought he was great. I think he thought John Bolton was good, and he was good on Fox News, and he was good in the, I think he actually did like him and think he would be good at the job.
He's
I
trying
don't
to
know.
please people who, in the aftermath,
In
who hate.
hindsight, yes. In hindsight, I think he's come up with this as a way to say, well, it wasn't that I screwed up in picking someone that wasn't really didn't jive with like what I wanted to do, and I didn't like make a mistake in picking someone that was incompatible with my foreign policy agenda. It's that I wanted the crazy guy back there to scare him. I think he kind of.
I thought it was more of like his memory of him was kind of kicking in, and it was kind of like almost like, well, it wasn't all that bad, but whatever, moving on. And it was kind of like he almost like for some he's like thinking, oh, he's such an idiot, and it's like he's trying to think of John Bolton's such an idiot story in his head to tell on the show, and he's like, people are scared of him, but he's very pro-war, and then he didn't have any, because with everyone else you usually have a story, but not for John Bolton. It kind of just became like a he almost started just reciting propaganda.
Yeah, I think it's just that he was like, oh well, if he's saying he's an idiot, then he's saying I picked an idiot to be my national security advisor. I better come up with a reason why I did this. But I don't know. It was like I was saying, he kind of tranched him out to where he had these good picks, at least from my view. MAGA people hated him. They were all swamp creatures, neocons. And then you had like the first one where I was like, oh, that's kind of weird, was Kristi Noem. I was like, that's kind of an odd pick for Homeland Security. Like, okay, maybe she.
The reason I didn't think he would want her is I thought it seemed like he thought she was annoying.
Yeah, she's kind of weird, and I was like, well, I don't know. She's a governor, but she's a governor of South Dakota, so it's not like a border state. It's not like a state that's in a hurricane zone or like something that was sort of relevant to Homeland Security. Which Homeland Security deals with, the border and FEMA, emergency management, anti-terrorism, all that stuff, cybersecurity. But whatever, she's a governor. And then he had the Pete Hegseth one, which at first I was like, okay, like what is this? And he doesn't really have like the kind of experience you would typically expect. I have said I think his opinions. I think all of his opinions are spot on about like the problems in our military, getting rid of getting rid of the woke stuff. Preparing us to actually fight and like how you should fight once you start fighting. Like my problem was I can value all that stuff and recognize it as good, but then you could also turn around and say there should be plenty of people that have like the requisite experience that are also have those views, because those are very common, kind of broad, sort of surface views that lots of people hold. And so I don't know. I feel like it is partially a loyalty thing, and he just likes him, likes the look of it. He's an outsider. Maybe that's part of it too. Um, I don't hate that pick. I'm just kind of, that was one where it's like, okay, that's unusual.
At
And
the very
then
least, so much of the guy's media background and advocacy is on getting rid of kind of woke garbage out of the military. So at least he's like a heat-seeking missile for the
yeah,
first part of his term, not term, but his tenure to go after that stuff. And if he burns out, you can replace him. And that's kind of the good thing with him getting all these people out of the way right now is that I think it gives the Senate more time before he actually takes office to kind of prepare questions for some of the more questionable picks to hopefully expose some of them in the confirmation hearings, or at the very least they get selected fast, and within the first 100 days, if they're not performing, he can be like, oh, okay, you've done enough. No, I mean, like, oh, you already accomplished your goals in 40 days. Now we need someone professional or whatever.
yeah. I think part of the reason for that is
My
probably
thing-
just that he's only got 4 years this time, so it's like everything has to be lightning speed.
Yeah, my thing with Tulsi Gabbard is if people don't want her to stay in, or they want her to get blackballed in the confirmation hearings, then maybe Trump just gives her an advisory role to national security or to intelligence. What senators should do is ask her about Edward Snowden. She'll mess up that question.
Oh God.
She'll say something about like, oh, that showed the national security failures of the U.S. and spying on people. And you're like, what do you think about the fact that those issues were already being investigated, and he basically just stole a bunch of stuff and gave it to Russia?
You know what I would ask her? You know what I would ask her about? I would ask her about the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, because she said that was like an illegal act of war perpetrated by the U.S. government, by the Trump administration. I would ask her about that.
Remember when she said that she said that Donald Trump was Saudi Arabia's B or whatever?
Yeah, I would ask her stuff like that, and then be like, so is it your opinion that the president you're working for is a war criminal? Like, because you said this. That's the kind of stuff I would ask her.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if Trump saw that on TV, then he'd be like, oh, she said that? Because I honestly think Trump isn't as in tune as a lot of people tend to think on something. Like, he might not even know about the allegations against Matt Gaetz. I'm sure he does now, but he may not have known beforehand. Like, the way he made like the decision for Pete Hegseth, it was like, he's considering all these people, and it was like a day before that he was just like had a meeting with him and was like, I want that guy. It's very spur of the moment kind of thinking. But
yeah,
you never know.
I think
put
you
all
ask
of
her
them
about Assange, ask her about Snowden, and that's I think where she sinks herself, is that she has some really simplistic online left opinions about some of these people and just knows none of the background. And they're like, oh my goodness, she's going to be the type of person as intelligence director who's just going to have like very like 5-year-old type opinions on different world leaders and figures and situations.
The Republican senators, I think, would not like that stuff, and they may not confirm her because of it. But a lot of the MAGA type people, I think they hold a lot of similar opinions about like Snowden and Assange and that stuff. Like, if you're going to talk to like Elon or Vivek or any of these people, they probably think that same way. I don't know about Elon. I really don't know a lot about
I know what you mean. Yeah, I no doubt
they
a lot
have
of
that
them
kind of weird conspiratorial, like the U.S. government is evil type of thing, warmongers, doing stuff like JD Vance.
What it really turns into is that it's like the U.S. is capable of anything type stuff.
Yeah, and JD Vance was in there, and he was in an interview with Jake Tapper, and he was asking him like, okay, like all of these people, it's the typical question you get, his former whatever. He just runs through the list of all the cabinet members, Mike Pence, these people who don't support Trump anymore. And he's like, well, why do you think these people aren't endorsing him? Some of them have endorsed, Kamala and stuff, and they said he's not good and unfit for office. And JD's like, it's because all of them want to go to war with foreign countries, and Trump won't let him do it. And I was like, really, that's why Mike Pence isn't endorsing Trump, is because Mike Pence wants to go to. It had nothing to do with like, like, come on, man.
That was even like the thing is, I think Liz Cheney's annoying. I think the funny thing is when she was a House member when Trump was president, she voted with him like 97% of the time.
Oh yeah.
But I think she got a big ego and about disliking Trump for aesthetic reasons, and then got really over the top about it, just the way that Jeff Flake did, same way that like John McCain really hated him. Yeah, Trump said some nasty things about him, but like more Mitt Romney is a good example. Mitt Romney seems to more have aesthetic hatred for Trump more than anything. And I think that's the same thing with her. But I was like listening to like Crowder's show, and he just says like, oh, outside of like, oh yeah, she just wants war, and that hell to Liz Cheney would be a world without wars going on. I'm like, name the war that she's advocated for. Does anyone have this in living memory? The
real.
War that she advocated for? Can we like Bueller? Like I don't see, where was the wars?
Yeah, I don't know. That kind of stuff is wild to me. But
it's just such a stupid opinion. Like, name the person who's pro-war.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like going back to the cabinet picks, I would put those three, RFK, Gates, and Tulsi, into a totally different category from like Gates, and all those other people I think are going to get confirmed just fine. I don't know about those three. I don't know if any of them will be confirmed.
I think RFK will probably agree to put his head down on abortion type stuff. And I think that he also has Zeldin probably keeping him in line at the not FDA. What is it?
Yeah, the FDA, Food Drug Administration.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna be.
Yeah, so I think that he can probably keep that. That's the funny thing, is I think there's good counterbalances. The bad picks are kind of counterbalanced by other people who are more level-headed. And if they start screwing around, and if RFK outside of like vaccines and abortion is probably acceptable to most people. My thing is that Health and Human Services, where he's at, you could say that RFK is very much an aggressive hammer in search of a nail, but at the very least, he's probably in a department where it's hard not to hit a nail.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that I like, the way I see it is that stuff is probably going to function anyway, unless they're just trying to abolish it. Which,
and some of the stuff you could make an argument for, like the Nutrition Administration's been a bit of a failure. Having food labels saying you should eat like 2,000 calories of bread a day.
Yeah, no, I've heard some of the stuff he said. And obviously, he said a lot of wacky things, which is why I don't think he'll be confirmed. Apart from not having the credentials for the appointment, I don't think he'll get in, and I don't think Gates will. Tulsi is the one I'm probably the most worried about. I mean, I don't know. They're all weird. Like Matt Gaetz said he wanted to abolish the Department of Justice. So I don't know. I feel like the three of them, I'll say this, maybe one of them gets through and then two of them don't.
I think I'm going to predict probably all three of them get through. Matt Gaetz is the one I'm most shaky on. If someone just dumps that House report that's apparently around about him, and he's like, yeah, he's a
they have leaked some of that stuff out. So there's separate things on him. There was like investigations on him before, like criminal investigations. This is like an ethics complaint about him sleeping with a 17-year-old. And part of the defense, it seemed like he's never been convicted of anything. I'll say that. I don't know if he's guilty of it, but I believe part of their defense, his lawyers, what they were saying was, and even he, I believe, admitted, like, I was at the parties where this stuff was happening, where there was these, people were sleeping with underage girls, and they were prostitutes essentially. And part of their defense was this was happening on a yacht, so it was in international waters and therefore not subject to U.S. law. And I was like, well, I guess technically then he's not convicted of a crime, but that's not going to put people's mind at ease, I guess.
This is like that's like a plot point to like Baywatch.
Yeah,
it's not like an actual thing. You can't go out in the middle of water and murder a guy and then come back and be like, technically was 3 miles out.
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I heard. Where did I heard that on some either report or something where they were discussing the leaked, and I maybe it's all just from a leak. So maybe
there is a hilarious AI video, if you've seen it, where it's just like a fake Tucker Carlson interview with Matt Gaetz. He's just like, so they were alleging that you slept with a 17-year-old girl, and you just have Matt Gaetz cut in 17-year-old woman, and then it's just like the awkward staring meme.
Jesus. Yeah, I don't know about him. Honestly, that stuff may. It's also that the Republicans don't
Most
like him.
hilarious outcome is he resigns from Congress as he doesn't get confirmed
That's
and
the
he's
thing
replacing
that
with someone better.
That's the thing that made me think like he must be very confident, or people were speculating that that's in order to squash the ethics investigation. That could be,
Or maybe it's
or
also to
he's
force
just
their
really
hands to confirm him. Hey, because doesn't that look like subverting democracy?
yeah.
Not confirming me after I already gave up my seat.
Yeah, he's probably
No,
very confident, and I am sure this is why I think Trump actually. People were speculating about, oh, well, maybe he doesn't actually care if they get in or not, and he just throws people under the bus. And I was like, well, no, because he was pushing for recess appointments, which was weird. Everyone was saying this, like, well, why does he want to make sure he can get recess appointments, which you can always do, but he was like pushing for it when his own party was running the Senate, and it was like, why would he care? Like, why? What are you going to do, Trump, where your own party is going to be blocking your appointments? And that's when the really crazy picks like all came out, like in the next day or two. It was like, oh, okay, now we see why you wanted the recess appointments. And the
at
reason
least
that
at least
you only
Matt
need
Gaetz
four.
plays into my hope that if things go crazy, they go like DC Gotham City crazy, because I
Joker.
need a fight to take place between Matt Gaetz as pre-acid Two-Face and Rosa Delora, if you know that lady from Connecticut.
No,
She looks like a human peacock.
Jesus,
Oh, go look her up. It's actually hilarious.
Rosa DeLaura.
Or Dolero or something like that. If you go Rosa, it'll immediately come up. She looks like she is like Poison Ivy but 80.
Oh Jesus. Oh my God.
Yeah, right? Don't you want a
Is
supervillain fight
she's a
between her?
congressman? How have I not seen this woman before?
She's like one of the highest ranking
Does she
Democrats.
still look like this?
Yeah.
Like
She's
with the
still around.
multicolored Technicolor coat with the purple hair?
Yeah. It gets
Holy
weirder.
crap, this woman looks batshit.
But you know what I mean? That like she's like one of the highest ranking Democrats, but you just
How
don't really
have I
hear
never
from her.
noticed this woman?
She was like the chair, or she was like at one point like the chair of the acquisitions committee or whatever. It's like for what is it called?
I
It's
feel like
something
I've
about like
seen
basically
this
new
lady
spending
before.
approvals.
Wow, yeah. That is wild. I mean, I know nothing about her other than the images I'm looking at here on Google, but I can tell she's like, oh my God, I'm going to share this one. I'm going to put this on the screen for, if I can. Let's see
It's
here.
worth it, yeah. How could
Okay.
you not put this on screen?
Because I just want people to understand what I'm looking at, how I'm judging someone. You know, they say don't judge a book by its cover, but then,
This was not usually the cover they're talking about.
yeah, when you see something that's kind of like this, you're sort of like, like what? What is going on? This person's in Congress. This is like, what's that video that's been going around with the New Zealand Parliament or whatever it is, where the people are freaking out on the.
Oh my goodness, that's honestly, I was actually thinking like, oh man, I should find an angle to bring that up today because that's the most obnoxious thing to be. People are like, this is so epic. It's an ethno-socialist party.
I've not seen anyone
Fighting for
saying it's
special
epic.
rights for only Maori people. It's crazy.
Everyone I've seen is just clowning on it. Like, what the fuck is going on in New Zealand?
There's all these like lefty people who are like, this is so cool. Like it's actually not. It's called Nazism. These are basically Maori Nazis. Not quite. I'm trying to be a little bit too rude, although they also hate Jews and they don't like Israel.
Oh my God.
Or at least they hate Zionists.
How does that get roped into everything? Like, what do the Maori like ethno-identitarians have against Jews? Like, come on.
When you support your own special ethnic separatist nonsense, you have to support everyone else's. That's why the IRA
it's like a
also
prerequisite that you have
Palestinians.
to be. It's like a prerequisite that you have to be anti-Semitic in order to have like an extremist identitarian movement.
Yeah,
no matter what it is.
Yeah, but it's the principle. You support our nonsense, we'll support your nonsense.
Yeah.
But like, and like that lady like freaking out. It's like they are literally only there because you know this in New Zealand, and this is actually why parties on the harder right, like New Zealand First, are kind of required these days because they're pushing inside the coalition government they're in with like the normal conservatives or liberals or whatever to get rid of all these special Maori rights. That Maori party is basically only there because there are a bunch of seats in New Zealand that only Maori people can get to vote for. and only
Oh,
Maori people
really?
can run for. Yeah.
I
Do you
didn't
know that
even
they
know.
have laws where they're trying to push it so that Maori people own the sea, basically? That fishermen would like owe them money.
Oh my god, what percentage of the population is even Maori? Is it like
I don't even know. But the funny thing is, you couldn't even say, well, this is kind of like other indigenous groups. Like, no, they showed up to New Zealand in like 1300 and killed everybody.
yeah? I mean, that's the same thing. And this is getting way off topic, but I was having this argument with someone about like some of the natives in America, and like talking about uh, it was something about the land being stolen and all of this, and I was like, do you realize that like the people you're talking about, like the Iroquois, before, right, literally right before, we're talking like the previous 100 years, like there had already been settlers in the area. They're like, do you know about the Beaver Wars? Is that something y'all have talked about in Canada in your history?
That
It's
actually
closer
sounds
up.
a bit familiar.
It's
But
close up there. It's around the Great Lakes. So the Iroquois, basically, when the French were in there, they wanted to buy up beavers. They were buying them from the natives, and the Iroquois, they were trading guns and stuff with them, and they were running out of beavers to hunt and sell to the French people and other white settlers and stuff. They went out on a genocidal campaign and wiped out like from hundreds of miles around this huge area around the Great Lakes, like right before the American Revolution, which is after that is when the Americans really started settling over into that area. They just wiped all of their neighbors out and exterminated them, basically for money. I mean, it was for beaver pelts to sell for money. And there's countless like things like that where it's like that was going on forever here. And I don't know, we're way off topic now.
there's this
Way off
like
topic.
missionary biography or whatever of forget his name, but one of the Canadian universities is named after him. He went to like the northern part of like Manitoba, which is even today kind of like the middle of nowhere. And like the tribes were not exactly like, peace and love type people. And he's just talking to people who aren't even like at war, but like, you go and kill some game and then you force your wife to go and drag it back to camp and then you kick the crap out of her later. Like, guys, it's like
Oh yeah,
basically
no, yeah,
a ghetto scenario.
that goes
Just
way
just
back.
because people lived in the middle, do you think that living in the middle of the woods didn't make people harder?
Well, no, and they were like I tried to explain because there was this professor guy I saw online. He was like a sociologist, so I don't know why he's talking about history. I'm big into history, and I was like, he was talking about like the natives. Oh, they weren't really, they were peaceful and all of this. I was like, that's bullshit. Like they were genocidal as fuck too, and not even like this was within the historical record. The Comanche conquered an empire and wiped out all of their neighbors, literally simultaneously, like while white people were settling the land. Before you ever had like pre-Columbian
You're,
contact,
you're like sitting there like, why do you think they had a warrior culture that is
we had
celebrated today? Is it because they
archaeological. Oh no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, why do you think there was like a celebrated warrior culture that like gets recognized as part of like a key aspect of their history today? If they were like, they're not doing this because they're fighting deer. You know what I
No,
mean? It's because they're
it,
fighting other people. And
it's
usually
literally
back in the day, and this is how it worked in like ancient times, you tend to just kill everybody. You
yeah,
didn't really leave a couple people left. Let them learn their lesson, come back some other time. It's because the idea was that everyone is so like that, you have to wipe out everybody or they will come back for you.
yeah. The only reason they wouldn't is if they couldn't. But we even in the archaeological record, you have like the Crow Creek massacre. It's a mass grave. This is pre-Columbian contact. They mutilated all of the bodies. That we know from the makeup of like the ages and sexes of the people that were in the grave. This was the whole village. It was hundreds of people. All of the women that were of breeding age or reproductive age were missing, so they took them as sex slaves. Basically, all the bodies were mutilated and scalped. Some of them had been scalped multiple times. You could tell where it healed over. So this was like a common thing. There's defensive structures. Like in order to invest the time to build a defensive structure, you're not going to do that unless you're having frequent war. But we're way off topic now. You threw me off with the Maori and the.
Well, I was
the
going to say one more
peaceful.
thing. People always forget that it took another 2 years to convince a lot of the native tribes to give up their slaves after the Civil War.
Oh yeah. Well,
They
and they
technically
had slaves
by
before that.
rate of how many people they had the highest amount of slaves per capita.
Yeah. But anyway, enough dumping on the natives. I don't hate the natives or anything. I'm just saying they weren't like angels. Okay.
Yeah, like I hate that's honestly my least favorite thing about all history is that people kill off all the nuance that actually makes it interesting.
Yes. Yeah, I
I
agree.
hate war
Because
movies.
I'm not even trying to downplay the horrible atrocities that like I could go on a tangent about that too if you wanted. The reason I don't do that or wouldn't feel the need to do it is because the atrocities of like the Americans or the Canadians or the Australians or anybody, the settlers, those are all like harped on to death. Like that's everybody gets that with like their breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah. Oh, anyways, so is there anything about Trump's administration that we need to say anything more about?
No, we were just talking about the cabinet picks. Do you think this is going to be like the first administration? I guess basically.
I think it's going to get up to speed faster. I don't agree with people who are thinking, and the funny thing is usually people on more of like the MAGA side of things who think that Trump is going to like cut funding to Ukraine. Does anyone remember that when he was the president, he literally was the only one between him, Obama, and Biden who was giving offensive weapon supplies to Ukraine before the invasion?
Yeah.
Obama couldn't even move himself to give him like $5 after they actually were invaded in 2014. And then Trump gave them like Javelin missiles and whatnot when he was the president, artillery tanks.
He's surrounding himself with people, all of who, well, not all of them, but like the people in the important security positions, like Mike Walls, Marco Rubio, even Pete Hegseth, apparently have all said, even fairly recently, we need to just take the leash off of Ukraine and give them better weapons and let them go over there and kick Russia in the nuts really hard. So they can be in the best position to negotiate an end to the war.
Yeah, people were wrongfully quoting Rubio saying that we shouldn't be funding Ukraine in perpetuity. And it's like, well, no. His point is, let's not keep funding a stalemate with no way to get onto an off ramp. That's not being weak. That's saying, like, actually, even Trump's people have proposed in the past, basically try and trade a bunch of the Ukrainian land back in favor of in exchange for some of the Kursk regions, or you just triple the Ukraine funding. And now Russia not only can't win, there's a good chance they could lose more territory, more troops, and actually like not like Ukraine, caps Moscow, obviously, but like in a certain sense to the Russian people, they lost. The war didn't peter out. We lost. We have triple the casualties. We have like no tanks left, kind of a scenario.
Yeah, and that's like a lot of people will have concern about them because a lot of these people, they voted against the last funding bill. And my thing on that is, yes, but all of these people are insanely pro-Israel, and that bill also had funding for Israel in it and for Taiwan.
The whole point
they voted against it because there was no border funding. Like that was why. It was because the Democrats were giving them nothing, which is not how you do that in a divided government. And like you need to give them something, and they were just like being obstinate and like, no, we're not going to give you anything for the border at all, and we want everything. And they're like, well, then we're just not going to play ball. And all of them said, like, we're willing to fund Ukraine and Israel and all of these other things. We don't like how you're doing it necessarily. Like, we want to know where everything's going and have an account of the dollars, but we'll do it if you give us something for the border. And the Democrats were just like, no. And so they didn't vote for it.
Yeah, I always hate that when people assume that there's only one person involved in the scheme of chicken at all times. Like, no, they can literally give the And the funny thing was that the Republicans were even giving an off ramp to Biden to give them border funding, so then he can be like, oh, the Republicans forced me to get tough on the border in a way I didn't want to.
Yeah, still didn't want to do it.
Yeah, which demonstrates how bad they are at politics at times. Although, to say something about Biden again, even though it's been a while since we were talking about that, man, he's such a better politician than even Obama is in a lot of ways. The funniest thing about it is that Obama trashes him when he's his VP, treats him like garbage, and he says, like, he's an idiot and whatnot. And is Biden an idiot? Yeah, probably, but Obama is too, so it's kind of a hypocritical criticism. But Obama passes over Biden and just immediately endorses Hillary Clinton right when the 2016 primaries are starting off, which boxes Biden out because what are you going to do? You're going to run without your other your colleague's endorsement. You're like the VP and you didn't get the president's endorsement, so he couldn't run there. Hillary loses. 2020 starts up. Biden jumps in the race. Obama backs Warren. He backs like kind of Buttigieg. He basically backs everybody but Bernie Sanders before circling back to Biden at like the very end. I don't even think he technically formally endorsed him until after he was already the nominee. Biden wins, and then Obama's like, "Oh, okay, 2024, Biden, it's not your time this time, even though it was your time last time." Uh, Basically forces him to get out of the race, him and Nancy Pelosi and Kamala, and then Biden in retaliation is like, "Oh, okay, well, I'm going to endorse the lady you said was the hottest AG in the country 30 minutes after getting kicked out. Have at it, Barry." And then just made Obama look like a complete moron.
I don't even know if I think Obama probably wanted Kamala. I almost blame him
I
for.
think he
I
knew.
think
I think he
Kamala was
wanted
like
Kamala,
his
but not
girl.
this way, in a certain
Yeah,
sense.
that could be. That could be.
That Obama was basically forced to Obama was forced to own his decision over time, because obviously he was the one who made Kamala his VP and had been shuffling her upward and
Yeah.
whatnot. And so he didn't even give Obama a second to doubt his own instincts. You have to embrace Kamala. There's no Newsom. There's no Pritzker. You have to take her.
Yeah. Well,
And that now they can't even blame Biden because he gave Obama all the endorsement resources he needed.
yeah, that could be. But I was going to say we've gone on for a little over an hour now, so I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to talk. We kind of went all over the place. Talked about the election, Trump administration, ranted about Native Americans for a while, and the Maori people.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think we covered a lot. Especially like I always like talking about the misconceptions people have about like stuff around speakers and who's a rhino, who's not. I always find that interesting to talk about because I find it so frustrating that
it's
people don't
frustrating.
understand it. So
Yeah.
whenever someone does understand it, I'm like, oh my goodness, somebody understands that Lindsey Graham is not a raging liberal.
No, yeah,
It's just such a weird thing
dude,
to have to say.
I saw Hillary Clinton getting called a neocon today, and I was like, "What does this
Yeah.
term mean? What does this word mean anymore?" Come on.
If you're applying neoconservative, or they'll even say neoliberal about her.
Yeah,
Which,
neoliberal's like an
yes,
economic thing. Like that's not even I remember people using that interchangeably as in neo. I remember saying this about Chew on Head, and I was like, I think she just thinks the word neo means like warmonger or like pro war,
bad.
because like neoliberalism is like an economic policy. It's like free trade and stuff, and less restrictive trade. It's like nothing like neoliberal and neoconservative have nothing to do with each other. Um, but I've seen them used essentially interchangeably. It's like there's the neoliberals who are the left wing warmongers, the neo cons are the right wing warmongers. Just so dumb.
Yeah. My goodness. But yeah, I guess that should be it for us. I don't really have anything else to add. I guess I have my predictions. I think all three of them will likely get confirmed: Gates, Gabbard, and RFK Jr. And then you think one or two of them might.
Yeah, that's kind of the reason I think that is because I think there's a lot of people that don't want any of those people, but you've got three of them, and you're going to have to focus down. And I've already heard three senators essentially say they don't like the Gates pick. They didn't say no, but they said they were like shocked or that's like a bad pick or whatever. And then you've got other people like Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell has nothing to lose. He has no reason to suck up to Trump. He's not coming back for another term. I don't think he likes any of those three people. Two of them were Democrats up until 5 minutes ago. Is RFK real? I guess he's an independent. He's not even technically a Republican, right? But he's not in a really political. It's the Health and Human Services. But
he's been so much more honest about his shift, though.
He's
He's been so much more honest about his shift than Gabbard. Gabbard was like a Bernie Sanders Democrat as of 5 minutes ago. Even this is where I have to give someone like Steven Crowder credit. Even he says, I'm extremely skeptical that anyone evolves this fast on their previous positions. Especially when she was like saying that Trump's like a terrible person and like a war criminal. And like she was embracing Medicare for all. At least RFK, he'll say that he still mostly believes everything he used to, but he's willing to compromise. Like, okay, fair enough. At least we can actually work from that rather than Gabbard, who's just going to probably be as opaque as possible.
I want her to answer the question about Qasem Soleimani, and I hope that the confirmation process goes through fully because that'll be entertaining as hell to watch.
What I think the tactic
those
of
three getting questioned, because I want them to ask her if she still thinks that Trump is a war criminal, and I want to know because it's one thing like Vance, called him Hitler. But Vance had come out and said, "Well, I was wrong. I just interpreted. I've changed, and had misconceptions or whatever."
Oh, remember
I
when
want to
people
know
were
what
hitting
Gabbard's
Thune for
answer.
saying
What
something
did
about
Gabbard
Trump in
say?
2016 far less inflammatory? And they're like, "This is why John Thune can't be it." I'm like, what?
Yeah,
Haven't we
yeah.
got
They
past
had.
the point where
They're like
haven't we got
okay
to the
with
point where people
Vance.
realize people change?
They're okay with Vance saying a while back he was Hitler, but he changed his mind. But like Pompeo said, okay, yeah, he probably shouldn't have done that with the classified documents, which he should not have done that with the classified documents. Yes, that's like an obvious thing. The correct answer on that is just to say, well, Biden did it too, and so did Hillary, and like it happens, and these people got away with it. That's a decent enough answer, but like just Pompeo to essentially say he shouldn't have been doing that with the documents. All of these people were like, he stabbed him in the back, he betrayed him. I was like, dude, Pompeo is like, he was pretty loyal to him out of all
The
those people.
nastiest one is Pence, where it's like, what was Pence actually going to do? He
Yeah,
was either he does something impossible in which he probably just argue that he did it wrong or whatever in blocking the confirmation of Biden.
that was so insane.
Like he can't do anything, guys. I'm sorry. He just can't. Oh, he really stabbed that guy in the back. Do you think where else did he stab him in the back? Nowhere. It's almost like he
So
wasn't trying to do
do you
anything.
think Kamala should overturn the results of this election now? Like, is that
Yeah.
if we're going with that? That was such a ridiculous. I can't believe an actual lawyer made that argument. God, it was Eastman. That was the lawyer. Eastman
And
made
that's
that
one of
argument.
those things where it's like, yeah, is it technically accurate? Sure. But even back in like the 1820s, if someone tried that, they just go to the Supreme Court and they're like, yeah, no, that's
Well,
stupid.
it doesn't.
And
It
that's
doesn't
the
say.
point of
It doesn't
judges.
say he can. It says there's nowhere it says that he can overturn the results. It says the vice president and the president in the presence of the Senate and the House shall count the vote, and that's it. Like it doesn't say anything about like
Yeah,
he.
I'm just saying, like, let's even just say that you're allowed to just say I miscount them on purpose or whatever. You would just go to in front, and even if that's technically what the text allows through what's not being said there, you would get to in front of a judge, and a judge was like, "Oh yeah, that's not right," and then you're like, "Oh okay," and then it would just end.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
point of
no,
judges, to have judgment.
yeah, it was never going anywhere, and it was completely ridiculous. But that's old news. That's old stuff. Past that now.
We're
But
on new stuff now. I
yeah,
really like the appointment of Doug Burgum. That's one that we haven't mentioned. Energy
Secretary of the Interior. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's an important one. And actually, that
you had made it better a VP. That's the guy I was kind of hoping for VP.
Doug Burgum for real.
Yeah, I like Doug Burgum.
I was hoping for Rubio. Rubio's out of all these people, he's probably my favorite. Out of all of them, he just seems the most legitimate and like to take. I think he takes like the law and the Constitution and his role and his duty the most seriously out of all of these people. I mean, I don't know all of them that well. I'm most familiar with him just because he's been around. He was a presidential contender in 2016, so he's been around a while. But I think he's a good guy. Anyway, if that's it, man, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up the stream here. It's been a little over an hour. Hopefully, I can get you back to talk about
Yeah.
this stuff again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be glad to be back. Oh, hey, Education Secretary Chris Christie.
Chris Christie.
Yeah,
Yeah, it could be.
because all the teacher unions hated him in New Jersey, and I'd love to see him back.
I want to know who's going to get energy. That's a big and energy is actually I think energy still controls our nuclear weapons program, which is kind of odd. You don't typically think of that as an important pick, but anyway, I'll catch you guys later. Probably do this again. Bye. Go ahead.